listening to StreetClothes, the podcast that takes you beyond the four walls of the hospital and into the lives of clinicians who live passionately no matter what happens to spark their hearts. Each week, we dive into the hobbies and side hustles that refuel the clinical spirit, recharge the mind, and remind us all that there's a big, beautiful world out there to keep exploring. StreetClothes, because life happens outside of scrubs.
All right, let's lace up our boots and hit the trails, because today we're talking about hiking. It's a hobby that's all about adventure, maybe a little bit of fitness, and connecting with the great outdoors. Hiking is one of the most accessible outdoor activities, so it's no wonder it's so popular. In fact, in 2023, over 57 million Americans have gone hiking at least once in the past year, and that's nearly 20% of the entire population. We're going to talk today about why hiking is maybe different than just a random stroll in the woods. There's some intentionality behind it. But there's something about hiking that goes beyond just that walk. It's a challenge. It's an exploration. It's a pure joy of just being out in nature. If you're trekking up a mountain or taking a leisurely stroll through the local park, hiking offers something for everyone. It's one of the best ways to disconnect out of that fast-paced, screen-filled life and reconnect with the world of nature around us. And the health benefits could be huge. It's a full-body workout that can improve your cardiovascular health. It can build muscle and even boost your mental well-being. It's been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, and even a short hike can have a big impact on your mood. There's something about the combination of physical exertion and the natural beauty that just lifts the spirit. Plus, hiking is an eco-friendly way to explore. Most trails are designed to minimize environmental impact to the space around you, and many hiking enthusiasts are passionate about conservation and protecting the places that they love to explore for generations to come. Whether you're a solo hiker or a part of a group, there's a strong sense of community and shared responsibility in the hiking world. Let's not forget the awesome views. If it's a majestic mountain range or a serene forest, the rewards of hiking are often as breathtaking as they are hard-earned. Every trail has its own unique beauty, and there's always something new to discover. So, whether you're an experienced hiker or just starting out, walking out your front door for your first big hike, remember that the trail is always there waiting for you. It's not just a hobby. It's a way to stay fit, to find peace, and experience the world in its most natural state. So, grab your pack, choose your trail, and tune into this episode to learn where your feet can take you. So how many years have you been a hiker? Like, has this been something from childhood or?
I was a young adulthood, so maybe like the last,
okay.
Now it's 20 years.
Yeah, those years add up quick, don't they?
Don't they though?
So what was your first hiking experience? Like, was it a family hike or was it just kind of out on your own?
So my very first hiking experience was actually when my mom was dating what would then be my stepdad, and he was a really big fisher. He loved to fish, and so we, were given some poles, and we parked the car, and there was kind of wilderness in front of us, and we were going to walk.
Where's the pond? I don't see it.
Really more, where's the asphalt
Yeah,
that gets us to the pond? So we were going to walk, and so we're carrying things, and I'm wearing sneakers, and we're walking. So it ended up being about a half a mile, not completely flat, to this fishing hole. And there were no cars around, and there was something called nature, right? And there was birds chirping, and I wasn't listening to music. I wasn't listening to cars. And so I'd never gone fishing before, as you probably already pulled from the start of this conversation and the story. So went fishing for the first time. But there was something just about being in nature that really just resonated for me. And I'm a city girl, been a city girl my whole life. And so really the only opportunity you have to be in nature when you're in the city is to physically leave it. And so hiking has really provided me a lot of opportunity to, again, leave that city space, connect with nature, and really just kind of be present, which again is not something I always feel like I'm able to do in my, shall we say, my real life.
I love that your first experience on the hiking, hiking is a hobby, I guess, wasn't to go hiking. It was to go fishing, but you had to hike to get to the other hobby, which is fishing. We'll have a whole episode on that topic as well. But that's an interesting combination of hobbies there. Like you get into one by doing the other.
What I love about it, though, is, people do hike for the sake of hiking, but I have found that hiking really does open up other hobbies and puts you in touch with people or in touch in spaces that you didn't even know they were there. You come across a lake or a river or a stream when you're hiking, or you come across other people doing things, again, that you would just never have experienced otherwise.
Making moonshine, growing illegal substances, all those kinds of random things you never see unless you're out there in nature.
I have never come across moonshine, but I've heard some really good stories about how they do that. So I would absolutely love to walk into that. So if anybody in California is doing moonshine, hit me up.
Hey, just come over to East Tennessee. We got plenty of it over here.
I was going to say, it sounds kind of romantic, but the kind of moonshiners you run into out in the wild in East Tennessee and West Virginia, that's what those movies are made. You don't want to run into them. They don't like being come upon. Yeah. So, anywho.
That's fair.
Over 57.8 million people in the U.S. went hiking in 2022, making it one of the most popular outdoor activities. The U.S. has over 200,000 miles of hiking trails, including the Appalachian and the Pacific Crest Trails. Did you know the average hiker spends $1,300 annually on gear, travel costs, and related expenses? It's not always that expensive. There's a lot of free opportunities to go hiking, especially once you already have your gear. But it could turn into a pricier hobby depending on where and with what you go hiking. Okay, Brenna. Hiking seems kind of straightforward, and I'd be surprised if anyone listening to the show has never heard the word hiking before, or something comes to mind when they think hiking. But kind of define it for us. If you were to lay it out at the lowest foundational level, how would you describe hiking?
Intentional walking in nature is how I would describe it, and the first thing that comes to mind is knee-high socks and those really attractive hiking boots.
Knee-high socks is an important part of this, huh?
It actually is.
All these years, I've been hiking in those little ankle socks that were cool in the 90s. Yeah, well, no, I guess 90s was still a little higher socks, but maybe early 2000s, the ankle socks came in, and I've been doing it wrong. Intentional was part of your definition. Why is that an important part here? If I just randomly find myself in the middle of the woods, that wouldn't qualify as hiking, huh?
I mean, I guess it would depend how we really truly want to define what you're doing in the middle of the woods. But what I mean by intentional is it's really a mindset. So part of what I love most about hiking is that you're really wanting to disconnect from day job. You want to disconnect from the city. You're wanting to just disconnect and really give yourself some time and space to be present in nature. And so for me, the two words that come up are intentional and present. Depending on your situation, wandering through the woods may or may not qualify.
So there's a little bit of mindset in there, right? What's the reason that I'm here? is there a walking / running component? Like, is there such a thing as like fast hiking where you're kind of hoofing it through there, or is that a different category altogether?
Well, there are these really ambitious people that like to do something called trail running. I personally like to think of them as gazelles. They kind of like gazelle up and down hills at speeds twice as fast as I can even do in the city. And so they're in a totally different echelon than me. And so they're really elevated. So trail running is a thing. I'm more of a intentional stroller.
Okay. Yeah. Those trail runners, I don't know if I've ever seen someone running trails, but I'm aware of those kinds of people. And yeah, not to switch topics here, but I had a buddy that was into mountain biking. And I grew up, riding bikes, and it's fun, like on the asphalt, whatever. Got some kind of small hills here and there, but I go out with them one time in Chattanooga. So, he's out kind of Aaron's part of the world. He shows up and he brings me a bike, and then he says, yeah, we're going to go up there. And I'm like, well, are we going to like start at the top and then just go down? And he's like, oh, no. We ride up and then down and up and then down. I'm like, oh, no, I didn't sign up to ride this bike up a hill. It's a whole other ballgame. So, hiking, maybe let's transition here. So this is, depending on where you are, it's hiking up and it's hiking down and it's hiking all around. Is that right?
Yes, definitely in California, we're a little more mountainy. And some of the best places to hike are kind of not unsurprisingly, right? And like elevations, like higher elevations.
Is there anything like when you're skiing that you can get like a lift up the mountain and then just hike down the mountain? Is that such a thing?
So interestingly, yes. If you happen to live by a skiing course, sometimes you can take a lift to the top of the mountain or down the mountain. However, those are pretty far in between. If you have a really strong person who's willing to kind of give you that, like the fireman, over the shoulder, or give you a piggyback ride, I have found that's also helpful sometimes. But for the most part, you're kind of on your own, both up and down, which is part of that intentional piece.
So let's get back to the attire here, because, you brought up those knee-high socks pretty quick. And I guess it's as good as time as any to talk about what kind of gear, if you're going out there, into the average hiking space that you go out to in California, like what should I be thinking about purchasing, or if I already have it, make sure that I'm equipping myself as I'm heading out the door for a nice hike?
So number one is going to be water. And so if you like to carry a water bottle, more power to you. I, however, need both hands to stay on the trail. So I love a Camelback. You put it on your back. You can fill it up with up to a gallon of water. I love to put some ice cubes in it. You also want a good quality pair of shoes. Flip-flops, will get you through maybe a quarter mile. After that, you're going to want to crawl back to the car. Also, solid socks. So you really can't have great shoes without great socks, because if you're going up and down the hills, it's amazing what that does to your feet and your toes. And then suntan lotion in California is also really, really important. And finally, I would say bug spray. Some people, their bugs have a love affair with them. Sometimes they don't. I have found if you're out, kind of past 8 o'clock in the morning, the bugs will find you and they chew you up, which really kind of takes away from the overall experience.
I will also say, don't climb a mountain in March with chacos on, because that's not a fun time, especially if there's snow on the ground.
So, Chaco, what's a Chaco? Define that here for me. I know, I've heard that, but I'm not exactly sure what that is.
It's a river sandal. Like it's a lot of like outdoorsy types really enjoy chacos. They're kind of more heavy duty. Yeah.
So the open toed. Okay, open toed. So great point on that, Aaron. Back to the shoe conversation. You said comfortable shoes, but you didn't necessarily say hiking boots. Is there like a spectrum? Can you wear hiking boots? Can you wear just regular like running shoes? You need some kind of stable tennis shoes. If we're scratching chacos off the list, like what is still on the list?
I gotta say, in California, I can't say that flip-flops and chacos are off the list. I've actually climbed Half Dome over at Yosemite and saw people doing it in flip-flops. So in California, we do things a little different. But I would say shoe is really based on what kind of terrain you're going to be on. Again, intentionally, you plan on going a quarter mile, or you're looking at 16, the weather. And I would also say, kind of how protective are you of your feet? And so I tend to be a little bit more protective of my feet. And so I love myself a really beautiful high top, flunky hiking boot, again, with those knee-high socks, because I also don't like my skin being tore up by small, like short, pointy bushes or thorns. But that's kind of a personal preference thing.
So I know this is an audio podcast, but anyone who has ever seen a photo of me online knows I'm rarely without a hat on, and almost always it's a red, like signature kind of red hat. So headgear is important to me. On a hiking trip, or on a stroll, on an intentional stroll through the woods, if we will, what's your preference? What are your thoughts on headgear?
So I like to pile my hair on top of my head. So I kind of have my own built-in headgear. I think for people that maybe don't do that, or maybe are a little bit more sensitive to the sun, a hat is always great. However, it doesn't go kind of with the overall outfits that we roll with in California. We tend to be more bareheaded, if you will.
Okay. All right. It's not like Texas where you turn around and see 12 cowboy hats in random places that you wouldn't expect. So.
You know what? I can honestly say I don't think I've ever seen anyone hike with a cowboy hat in California.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, they're out there. You start going, I guess some of the mountain ranges. We got the Guadalupe mountain range in West Texas. Hot out there, but it's kind of the really bottom extension of the Rockies, I think. Just a little bitty sliver out there, and it ain't nothing compared to the real Rockies out there on the west side of the world. But let's talk about that typical hiking day. You mentioned, obviously we talked about gear. You mentioned a little bit about the weather. What considerations do you have as you're planning a hike on the weather? And then how does that impact kind of what you're packing, or, no go, planning, etc.?
Oh, great question. So there's a lot of different microclimates in California, and I'm currently in San Francisco, so there's even more. So layers are really important. So generally, again, depending on the time of year, it could be a little cooler in the morning. Sometimes it can get really hot. And I find that you can only take off so many clothes while you're in public. So kind of being thoughtful about, kind of what you want those layers to kind of protect. And then there's a lot of, again, like short bushes. There are going to be lots of things with thorns. So you really want to wear something that's going to protect you. If you're doing kind of more of a beginner trail, that might be a really wide trail, not a lot of things around you. You could probably, kind of get away with something a little less protective. However, if you're doing some serious hiking, like in Yosemite or something a little bit more off the beaten path, then you really want to wear those layers. So also, is it going to rain? So if you're, doing a 16-mile hike and it's going to be 100 degrees and it rains and you get soaked, on mile 12, you're just really going to be miserable. So I think that part's really important. So checking the weather in advance, being thoughtful about what time of the day you're leaving, how long you think you're going to be gone. Some honest conversations about how slow or how fast you hike sometimes could be really helpful. And then, do you need to break snacks? So kind of all those things are really helpful to have on the front end. Because again, in the middle of your hike, you're not going to the grocery store or hopping in your car to get anything that you missed.
Also, if you go by yourself, do you need to let somebody else know where you're going to be and how long you're going to be there?
No, that's a really, really great point. So I do like to also go camping when I do my hiking, and when I do larger hikes, I definitely do like to notify somebody. Again, I don't consider myself to be a gazelle, so I always think there's a risk that I'm going to fall off of a side of something and I'll be in the bottom of a ditch and nobody will know I'm there. So I definitely do communicate. I will say in California, unless you're like really, really out there, we have really great cell service. And so usually GPS is kind of there. And again, generally the hiking trails in California are pretty busy. So again, unless you're really doing something solo, we almost always run across somebody else.
Okay, great point, Erin. On the safety side of things, maybe let's dig into that a little bit more. So I know there's a lot of episodes. I'm kind of a forensic files kind of nerd, so I've seen or heard a lot of those episodes. I'll listen to them. So what's interesting about forensic files is even though there's a ton of visuals, if you just listen to the audio, it's almost just as audio friendly as it is like a TV show. So, take that for what it's worth. Anyways, there's a lot of stories on forensic files about those hikers that go missing. Typically not just ones that fall off the cliff like you're kind of afraid of there, but they're pushed or they're drugged off the cliff or, whatever. But apart from letting folks know where you are, and not even like, safety against bad guys too, I'm just thinking about like, how do we make sure that we get back home as safe as we left? What are those other considerations that folks should be thinking when they approach hiking?
Again, I think that the intentionalness is really important. So if you're going somewhere kind of off the beaten path, do you have enough gas to get you back and forth where you're going? Have you marked your car? Do you know where you're parked? Again, being thoughtful about how long you think you're going to be gone. So is there a check-in call? Like, hey, I'm going to call you when I get back to the car to let you know I'm okay. So I think that thoughtfulness is really, really super important. Also, again, I'm a little bit of a nerd myself. And so I have, like a safety kit, first aid kit. I've got, all sorts of equipment in the back of my SUV. So if something does happen, I'm not, again, kind of in a situation where I am in the middle of nowhere and not able to get to a grocery store or a Quick Trip or even get cell service. So I think that intentionalness is really important.
Now, I know around here we have a lot of bears. I'm in the East Tennessee area in the Appalachians. I don't really know how you would say that.
Yeah, they'll get on you for that. If you got hate mail, please here in beyondclean.net on how to pronounce Appalachia or Appalachian. Okay.
Right, but do y'all have the same issues out there with wildlife, or like what precautions do you take with that?
I think our biggest thing is probably snakes and any sort of plants that'll come up and get us. So the really attractive high top hiking boots and socks are super helpful. The intentionalness I think is also important. So if you're in Southern California or you're more in the desert, you're going in the middle of the day, you're going to probably see snakes. So being thoughtful about it. If you are in Northern California, again, a lot of those places are pretty touristy. So there's not a whole lot of bears around. However, again, if you're going to go off the beaten path and you are in Northern California or and kind of in the forest space, again, being really thoughtful about how long am I going to be there for. And yeah, if you might run into any larger creatures. Thankfully, I've never been in a hiking situation where I've had to consider bears, but that honestly kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Way to go, Aaron.
Sorry.
You are going to give her nightmares about bears. Yeah, so there's like some legit bear spray out there. It's kind of like pepper spray, but for bears, it's a pretty common thing. I think they say the number one thing to do if you see a bear is turn around and run like hell. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Just run faster than whoever's with you, right? That's what they say.
Push them in the way.
That's right. Back to the conversation at hand on the hiking and planning. So we're talking about the weather piece. We're talking about the clothing piece. We just talked about the safety piece. Kind of mapping out and deciding where you want to go hike. Like, is this like a TikTok you're scrolling through and you're just seeing, hey, that looks like a fun place? Are you doing Google research? Are there like hiking forums and hiking groups you're in? Kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, I would say to all the above. So there are actual, printed hiking guides. There's apps. All Trails is one of my favorites.
Oh, apps.
Yeah. They have trails that you can get on there. Word of mouth, there's definitely hiking groups. So I personally have gone specifically to places to go hiking. Like I love to camp at Yosemite. I'll spend days hiking there. I also like to hike around my normal area. So again, I think that goes back to the intentionalness, but I am known to find a cool place and just kind of pull over and kind of go walking around. And so I think that piece is also kind of a consideration. But whatever it is you're doing, again, being thoughtful about how long do I want to be out? Do I know where my car is parked? Does somebody know where I'm going? I think, again, kind of making sure someone's aware of what you're doing. But yes, I've also gone and looked for places on social media. So being in San Francisco, there's a lot of really beautiful places around the Bay Area that are considered a little more hidden. And sometimes you'll find some really cool places. So down in San Diego, there's actually a naked beach. So maybe you want to go hiking and check out a naked beach that isn't necessarily publicly advertised.
So when you say naked beach, is it what it sounds like it is, or is that some kind of euphemism for something else?
No, it is a naked beach. Everyone on there
it's a naked beach. Okay.
Yeah.
Typical California. Okay.
Absolutely. Gotta show off those tan lines.
Why am I not surprised? Yeah. So let's talk about the cost piece of this. Every hobby or, side passion or even side hustle, it's got some kind of cost to it, even if it's just a time cost. We talked a little bit about the time cost, right? Like you're kind of spending hours or days at a time, going through this hike. What are the financial costs that folks need to kind of consider as they're getting into this?
No, I think that's a great question. So I'm a big proponent of having decent shoes and some sort of way to transport your water. So I would, invite you, if you're going to do more than just a few miles, to get a Camelback, because again, you can put water in it, store it, carry it with you. And, if you like to exist in the world in flip-flops, you're probably going to want to get yourself a good pair of sneakers. If you have a good pair of sneakers, those are probably great to start off again on those beginner hikes and kind of try it out and see how you feel about it. I also love to kind of observe nature. I've done some bird watching. So, as you kind of build into this hobby, you might want to grab a pair of binoculars, or you might want to explore a little bit more on the unbeaten path and get yourself a compass. So there's lots of different ways to kind of grow and evolve within kind of the space of hiking. And I would just really encourage people to kind of follow their bliss with it. Mine has evolved, and as other people's will when they get into it. But it can get a little pricey. I would say probably the most expensive thing is a really good pair of hiking shoes, but they're invaluable. They're worth it just from the sheer number of blisters you save yourself.
And so the places you typically hike, is there a charge to get into this place, or is it just kind of open access?
So officially or unofficially. So some of these places may officially have a charge. However, if you're not necessarily parking in a kind of a parking lot and you're going in hiking, you generally don't have to. So most of them are no cost. Also, if you are going into a, kind of a public national park, there might be some fees to get in. It would just kind of depend again on whether or not you're walking in or you're parking in. But most places don't have any fees associated with them.
Okay. So, Aaron, this is kind of a question for both of you, and this is my personal opportunity to test a hypothesis, okay? So my hypothesis, and it's kind of, I've already gotten feedback about this, so I've got to guess on what some of your responses are going to be, but my personal hypothesis, I grew up in the country. We lived on like 100 acres in the central Texas area, and so we had a lot of trees and stuff, and so I'd run around, as a kid, just go exploring all over the woods, okay? I grew up, and then I learned that there's this thing out here called hiking where people go and walk in the woods. And I was like, why y'all just walking in the woods? Like that just doesn't seem like something normal to do. But then I realized, and you said this earlier at the beginning of the interview, Brenna, that you're a city dweller. And unless you intentionally get out in nature, it'd be very easy to miss all of the experiences that you have in the woods. The birds, the streams, the trees, the flowers, just like all of life that happens outside of the asphalt in the still jungle. So my question, Aaron, I want you to go first because you grew up a little bit more rural. Do you think that for country livers, that hiking's less of a thing or less popular than, folks who are more urban or not?
I think it depends on just your personality, right? I don't think that it's necessarily like a geographical thing. We have a lot of people around here who I'm about an hour or so from the Smoky Mountain National Park. For us, my wife and I's draw for hiking and for getting out there is because we like waterfalls, and so we go and find a waterfall somewhere. There's plenty of those in the area, but
Ace of Base said, "Don't go chasing waterfalls." You know what they said?
It was TLC who said that.
Oh, TLC, that's what it was. Yeah.
But yeah, so it just depends on your motivation to get out there. Some people like just to go out and be in nature. Some people like to go see geographical things like waterfalls or canyons or whatever. Some people like to go wildlife, for wildlife. So they'll go hunting out bears or cougars or whatever.
That's true.
Or even bird watching.
It's like hiking / hunting.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's like what Brenna said, right? I'm hiking to go fishing. So I'm going to hike in to go hunting. Okay. Interesting. So Brenna, what are your thoughts?
that I feel like it's either a fitness activity for people who just are maybe tired of being inside of a gym, or it's very, very intentional to kind of disconnect. I kind of feel it's more one or the other over here.
Okay. Let's talk about if you could do hiking full time as a job, right? So like right now it's a stress reliever. It's a break in the monotony, like you said, get you out. Do you love this hobby enough that if you got paid to hike and it would cover all your bills, is this something that you do full time?
Yeah, I thought about that and I absolutely would, because there's so many other ways to lean into it that I just don't have time to do that I think I would really, really be nourished by.
What's your favorite hike? What's your favorite location?
Yosemite National Park. I spent 6 months training to do Half Dome, and it kicked my butt something fierce, but it was beautiful. It was something to achieve, something that not everyone gets a chance to see. You have to get a lottery ticket just to get up there. It was probably the hardest hike I've ever done. And the view there, I can't even articulate. So
I feel like I should know Half Dome. By context clues, I'm saying it's a mountain in Yosemite. Can you give me a little bit more context there?
Yes, there's also a famous photographer. His name's Ansel Adams. He was pretty well known for his black and white nature photography. And he actually spent a lot of his time and his career taking pictures of Yosemite.
Oh, that Half Dome's the one that like it's so steep that you like. There's people that you get hurt on it. Yeah.
Yes, you have to take cables up.
Man.
Wow. Okay, so it's not like a smooth top. It is.
It kind of is.
Kind of like a sheer cliff.
It kind of looks like a half circle.
Okay.
And on one side of it, they have cables, and so you have to actually kind of climb the cables. There's quite a bit of an incline. But on top of it is actually pretty flat. And they only have the cables up at certain times during the year because it's so slippery. And people do, ironically, get hit by lightning and electrocuted up there.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me to my next question. So that's your best hike. What's your scariest scenario where you felt like I may be out of my depth here on this hike?
So unfortunately, I have a few of those. And so
okay.
Again,
you don't learn your lesson the first time, or what?
Well, no. At first, you don't succeed. You try again. So theoretically,
you keep trying. Okay,
you get better. So there are some hikes I did in Los Angeles where there was a particular hike called Devil's Backbone, and so there were sections of it that were pretty thin. And even though LA, we consider it being pretty warm, this place is so high up, there's still snow on the ground. Not much, mind you, in June. And so I'm not a big fan of heights. And so I'm kind of painstakingly walking across this Devil's Backbone with my feet hurting. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm tired, getting a little thingry. And I slipped. And so thankfully, I was with someone who was able to grab my hand while I'm screaming, "Get me up, get me up." Didn't let go of me and let me fall. So I think that was probably my most harrowing experience.
Yeah,
wow.
So I can sense the adrenaline already in that story. Wow. So you mentioned your accomplishment at the Half Dome, and I am curious here as we kind of start toward a close here. As hikers hike, how do you keep track of where you've been and, what you've accomplished, like these big hikes that you've really been looking forward to, that you made the summit? Do you do it at home on a scrapbook thing? Is that still a thing? Or do you keep mementos of your hike? Is it all tracked on an app? I know you mentioned some of the mobile apps out there. What do you like?
So yes, to all of that. All Trails, again, is an app that I like to use. You can track when you've been on hikes. You can track how many times you've been on hikes. I also have a little bit of a kind of a personal habit. So every single time I go on a hike, I collect a rock from somewhere along my hike. And so I have this kind of large, actually pretty large glass kind of jar, right, where I have these different rocks from all these different longer hikes I've been on. I'm also a data collector, and I have an Apple Watch. So I also love to record my hikes. And so I'm also very intrigued with, what was my elevation change and where was I slowest and how long did it take me? So there's a couple different ways you can track it. And then of course, got to take the selfie, right? When you're up there. So I think pictures also as well. So there's a lot of different ways that I kind of capture that experience and give myself an opportunity to relive it.
I love that. You got the digital and then you got the kind of the more tactile. Go ahead, Aaron.
Where is your next hike going to be?
That is also a really fabulous question. So it's been a few years since I've done Yosemite. And again, it took me about 6 months to kind of train myself to be able to do those 16 miles. And so the next place I want to go is Mammoth, which is not much further, but there's some more aggressive hikes there.
Day hiking is the most popular form of hiking, with 78% of hikers going out for a day rather than a multi-day trip. And obviously on the safety standpoint of that, it's a little easier to stay in contact if you're just out for the day coming home in the evening. Nearly 40% of hikers report hiking as a family activity, promoting bonding and outdoor education for all ages. 65% of hikers use apps or GPS devices for navigation, showing the integration of technology in hiking. And this is a big safety component as well as a communication component. And of course, if you've got an app, you got access to a camera, you can bring all of those hiking memories back home with you as well. And wildlife sightings are a highlight of 50% of hikers' experiences, emphasizing that connection again to nature. So it's not just about the walk, it's about the walk and the hike in the midst of all of this other wildlife experience that's happening around you. All right, Brenna, so you're a hiker, but that's what you do outside of work. What's your clinical experience?
So I have spent the better part of my professional life working in hospitals. I also teach and I conduct research. I do some writing. But my newest thing is I am now working with the government on some bioterrorism protection. So I'm really excited about that. And I will say that, kind of thinking the bioterrorism space, the best place you want to be if there is an event is in the middle of nowhere in nature. So I might actually be setting myself up for some sort of, getting myself out of a tricky situation sometime in the future. You never know.
I love it. This is a survival hobby. Right?
Never know.
Everyone's getting into that these days. That's why NORAD is like in the middle of a mountain out there somewhere, right? So if folks got questions about hiking, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of hikers listening into this, that have their own awesome hiking experiences and perhaps their own opinions about gear and preferences and whatnot, right? We're just getting your experience and opinion. But, if folks want to reach out to you to network about their hikes or tell you the impact that this interview has had, maybe getting them out of the house and saying, I can do this. This is something that I would enjoy. What's the best way for them to track you down for those kind of comments?
Oh, I love that. So I think LinkedIn's probably the best way to get a hold of me, Brenna Doran. If you want to send me an email, Dr. Brenna Doran at gmail.com will find me as well. And I would love to hear other people's stories. And really, I'm interested in other people's sock preferences. I mean, am I generationally, kind of the high sock kind of girl? Yeah. Or other people have opinions about this? This is something I really need to know.
That's great, Brenna. Yeah, I think there could be a whole conversation just around that sock piece because there's materials, obviously there's the design and whatnot. And then I know on the business side, people get into all kind of crazy socks as well. So that's a whole another episode maybe for another day. But Brenna, really appreciate your time and your passion for this hiking piece. There's so many hikers out there today. And in the U.S. especially, there's so many beautiful places to go see that you're not going to see from the interstate and you're not going to see from the pavement. You got to get out there among the trees to make it happen. So yeah, great interview.
Thank you so much. And I would also just throw out there as an invitation, maybe you can create some really great sock designs for us to wear out there.
There we go.
And, post up.
As he's wearing the Semper Sterilis shirt there.
Yeah.
That's right. I do. Yeah. Once Amazon can do print to order socks, I'll be first in line.
I will rock those, Hank. I will rock those for you.
That was Dr. Brenna Doran, a medical professional and newly minted bioterrorism consultant located in the Bay Area near San Francisco, encouraging us to get out and explore the great outdoors and find a mountain to hike. Thanks for listening to this episode of Street Clothes, where we explore the lives of clinicians outside of the hospital. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out with an interest that maybe you have taken up outside your department. That's a wrap for this episode of Street Clothes, proudly brought to you by the Healthcare HQ Network. Now, get back to what moves you, because life happens outside of scrubs.